Welcome back to Never Done Ask with me, John Martin. We are counting up or down 200 rail landmarks to celebrate Railway 200. We've reached the halfway mark and now let's go on with landmark 101. We turn to 1916. The iconic Johnston typeface was introduced to signage and posters on underground electric railways of London. This font has become synonymous with London. In 1919, the first pneumatic-operated doorstock entered service on London Underground's Piccadilly line. Referred to as the 1920 stock, there is some debate whether these arrived in 1919 or 1920. Start of 1922, the end of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. Established in 1847, the Lancashire and Yorkshire grew out of the Manchester and Leeds Railway. It was the most densely trafficked railway in the country. No station was more than 5.5 miles apart, and it owned more ships than any other British railway company, operating across both the Irish and North Seas. The company merged with the already huge London and North Western Railway. This was in advance of what was coming next. 1st of the 1st, 1923. It was the grouping. Having been pushed to exhaustion over the war years, the many rail companies of the country were merged into 4 large firms. The Southern, the London and Midland and Scottish, the London and North Eastern Railways were formed from companies that were often rivals. The Great Western Railway already dominated its area of influence and maintained its identity as it absorbed smaller companies. The London Underground lines, Mersey Railway, most of the Welsh narrow gauge lines and the Liverpool Overhead Railways were just some of the companies that stayed independent. Also in 1923, the first colour signals, 3 colour signals, were introduced on the line between Marylebone and Neasden. Green was carry on, red was stop, and yellow warned the next signal was set to red. 1st of the 8th, 1925, the 180-ton Bayer Garrett articulated locomotive was built for the London and North Eastern Railway, the longest and most powerful steam locomotive to be run in the UK. She was built in Manchester to help freight locomotives over the steep grades in Yorkshire. 1st of March 1926, the first 4 colour signals were introduced on the lines between Holborn Viaduct and Elephant and Castle. A second yellow light was added to the 3 colour system, so if both yellows were showing, it signified the next signal was set to yellow and the one after was red. 16th of the 7th, 1927 was the opening of the Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway, a 15-inch gauge railway that survives into the 21st century as an integral part of life on the Kent coast as well as a tourist attraction. 7th of the 11th, 1927, the London, Midland and Scottish Railway launched the Royal Scots service. This was originally an express service to mirror the LNER's Scots Express. The Royal Scot class of locomotives ran from London to Carlisle non-stop, the longest non-stop run in the country. 3rd of the 12th, 1927 was the opening of the Post Office Railway, an underground narrow gauge railway that linked the various sorting offices in London. 5th of the 1st, 1928, LNER Class A3 4472 Flying Scotsman ran a non-stop 392-mile service on the Flying Scotsman service, the East Coast premier London to Birmingham Express. The rivalry with the LMS had brought times down, and by 1938 this was 3 hours and 20 minutes. The service had improved catering and even a barber's shop. Crew comforts were helped by corridors in the tender so crews could work in shifts and then rest in a coach when not on the footplate. Early 1933 and the publication of the Harry Beck London Underground map. The design, drawn from his skills as an engineering draftsman, removed the London Underground's relationship to geography of London, aside from the river, which allowed it to be much clearer than the old maps, and led to the design icon and the most famous map in the world. 1933, the Brighton Bell was launched between Brighton and London on the Southern Railway. This was the world's first fully electric Pullman service. 19th of the 12th, 1933, going deaf and losing his eyesight, George Jackson Churchwood was hit and killed by the Paddington to Fishguard Express, hauled by a Great Western Castle class locomotive derived from his own star class. 30th of the 11th, 1934, LNER Class A3, number 4472, Flying Scotsman, running a light test train, officially hit 100 miles an hour. 30 years after City of Churros reported 100 miles an hour. LNER Class A3 2750, Papyrus, running tests for a new high-speed steam service from London to Newcastle, hit 108 miles an hour. This is the highest speed for a non-streamlined locomotive in the UK. 27th of the 5th, 1937, Oliver Bulleid joins the Southern Railway as the Chief Mechanical Engineer. Regarded by some as the last giant of steam, he introduced many innovations to the design, primarily focusing on reducing the workload of train and shed crews. His innovations were not always successful, and many of his designs were rebuilt under British Railways. 29th of the 6th, 1937, London and Midland Scottish Coronation class locomotive 6220 Coronation hit 114 miles an hour just south of Crewe on the West Coast Main Line, taking the speed record back from LNER's Silverlink. The train was still running at 110 miles an hour approaching Crewe, and harsh braking allowed it to cross the station's curves at 57 miles an hour, only 37 miles an hour over the speed limit. In 1938, the LMS introduced their first batch of Wirral units for the newly electrified lines in the Wirral, later to become the Class 503. These were the first mainline sliding door trains. 7th of the 3rd, 1938, LNER Class A4 4468 Mallard set a speed record for a steam locomotive at 126 miles an hour on Stoke Bank on the East Coast Main Line between Peterborough and Grantham. And there we are, 120 landmarks down. What do you think I've missed out of this section? What do you think I shouldn't have included? Please like, comment, subscribe. Please ring the bell to be notified. And I'll see you next time for another series of railway landmarks.